I see that crypto can really use AI and AI can really use crypto. And I see a bunch of different synergies that are starting to develop. I think it's still early, but if we get out ahead of this, we can all do extremely well and make the world better.
Most people know me for creating the framework for decentralized applications. So I created the framework on dApps back in 2013, which is adopted by Ethereum and used by a lot of people in the industry. Then more recently in 2023, framework for smart agents. How do you connect a crypto wallet with an AI agent, which is now reality, which is really cool to see.
We think that intelligence will be as widespread, abundant, and cheap as information is today. That's a world where decentralized AI is going to thrive, and we think it's the most asymmetric investment opportunity in the world right now.
It's really easy to be bullish on crypto when Bitcoin's at 126,000 and everything's going to the moon. We're not financial tourists here. We're here for the long run. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Beluga live stream. This is our first panel in the history of the show, so hopefully it goes well. I am your 21-year-old crypto degen host, Alpha, King of the Trenches, back at you again with another live stream. For those of you who don't know us, we are Beluga. Beluga is the nerd wallet for crypto. We stay in the trenches 24/7, so you do not have to. We have a newsletter written by Will McKinnon, complete crypto degen, great analyst, and amazing writer. Without further ado, Will, would you like to give us a little more intro?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm the CSO at Beluga. I've been here for, I guess, almost 3 years now. I've been in crypto since 2019, dropped out of Duke to trade all our favorite meme coins and DeFi Ponzi's back in the day. Spent a year at a investment bank on their digital team, and then decided I liked the more degenerate side of crypto a lot more than that, and I've been on that side ever since.
Everyone who's listening right now, make sure that you like, comment, retweet, and send this to your friends. I made a deal with our CEO and my mom that if we get on the trending page, I will drop out of college. So please help me get out of here. I have a ridiculous midterm next week and I don't want to take it. I much prefer doing this. So please make sure you share. And to all the panelists, by being on this panel, you cooperate that I should in fact drop out of school. So I really do appreciate it. Anyways, we're going to do some introductions. So we'll start with you, Jeff.
So first, Aiden, I met your mom, and I'm not going to do that to her. I met her at the same time I met you, actually, and she was super nice. And she said, thank you for taking an interest in Aiden and his work. So anyway, thank you for having me. My name's Jeff Herbst. I'm the founding managing partner of a fund called GFT Ventures. We're an AI-focused venture fund with 140 million under management, investing mainly in AI applications. We've also dabbled a little bit in blockchain, which we can talk about. I'm better known previously for my 20 years spent working in NVIDIA as their head of corporate and business development. I met Johnston before he had the leather jacket, and we hit it off in, I think, 2001, and ended up kind of creating my own job there and kind of growing up with AI. And I'm pretty excited to hear what you guys are thinking and doing. I'm not a crypto bro, but I'm pretty happy to be hanging out with you guys today. So it's making me feel good. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation, and I'm really glad we met, and thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And before we move on to the next introduction, can you give us your 1 to 3 sentence brief take/synopsis on crypto and AI?
I see that crypto can really use AI and AI can really use crypto. And I see a bunch of different synergies that are starting to develop. I think it's still early, but if we get out ahead of this, we can all do extremely well and make the world better. All
right, David, we'll move on to you.
Hey guys, David Johnston. I've been one of those old time Bitcoiners since 2012. I was actually working in AI even before that in 2011, back when we called it machine learning or natural language processing. I guess most people know me for creating the framework for decentralized applications. So I created the framework on dApps back in 2013, which is adopted by Ethereum and used by a lot of people in the industry. Then more recently in 2023, the framework for smart agents. How do you connect a crypto wallet with an AI agent, which is now reality, which is really cool to see. But I spend most of my time working now on Morpheus, one of the open source projects to give people access to their own personal AI. My whole take is every human will want to own their AI, not rent it from some big tech company, right? And so that's been my total focus, is how do we get to that timeline where I can own my AI, not just rent it from somebody else. So anyway, looking forward to the discussion. Should be a lot of fun.
And Rob, let's hear your intro. Tell the panel
Yeah,
a
of
little bit
course.
about yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that was really well articulated, David, and looking forward to double clicking on that thesis. I share it. By way of brief background, I come from a TradFi background, so I worked in investment banking out of college. I then moved over to a private equity firm. I've been an entrepreneur for a few years, have a couple businesses now, and I am one of the managing partners at Stillcore Capital, relatively new fund, among the first in the world that's focused specifically on decentralized AI, so that crypto AI intersection, and have a couple other partners in the mix. Mark Jeffrey, who's the host of the Hash Rate podcast. It's de facto largest BitTensor podcast in the world right now, at least by X views. And he, wrote a book about Bitcoin 2013, is a very credible name in the space. And then the third partner is Jason Calacanis of the All In podcast. I'm sure there's some listeners here in the audience. And that's the three of us. And I think like the overall thesis on decentralized AI is, we think that intelligence will be as widespread, abundant, and cheap as information is today. And that's a world where decentralized AI is going to thrive. And we think it's the most asymmetric investment opportunity in the world right now. And that's why we started this fund.
Amazing. A little format for everyone. We will start with individual questions for the panelists, just because everyone here is so interesting. And then we will move on to a general panel discussion where we will be talking about lightly debating crypto AI and all of its merits. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And again, remember, make sure you share this with your friends. Send this to 2 people that you think would be interested in crypto AI. It's really easy to be bullish on crypto when Bitcoin's at 126,000 and everything's going to the moon. But we're not financial tourists here. We're here for the long run. We're price insensitive, regardless, bull market, bear market. I think crypto is the best industry in the world. And I think it's important to have these conversations, especially in the bear market, to remind us why we're all here. Kind of tapping into Jeff's background. What was it like working for Jensen Huang?
NVIDIA has been an incredible story, and he has clearly been the driving force behind that company. I will tell you, I don't know I saw him talking about the definition of smart, which he has different ways to think about it, but I would say all-round intelligent person, probably the smartest, most well-rounded thinker I've ever met in my life, and I've had the opportunity to meet many, many smart people. Very intense, very hard worker, very logical and thoughtful person. Everything boils down to kind of first principles. Great leader, great communicator. So it's really hard to say anything bad about him. The only thing you'll probably hear is, the people that work for him, including myself, he will drive you hard, and he will make you the best that you can be. And I think he's almost like, I did a lot of sports, and he's almost like one of the great coaches. Like, I look at, you guys are probably too young, but there was a guy named Vince Lombardi. The Super Bowl trophy's named after him, from the Green Bay Packers. And I think the players he was very hard on the players. Some people couldn't play for him, but he turned them all into winners. And I think that's, to me, a big part of the story of NVIDIA is he takes people and he turns them into winners, and he turned the company into a winner. And a lot of people don't realize this, but NVIDIA was not an instant success story. We had a lot of fits and starts. For you crypto guys, we had a crypto crash there, like 2018, where, a lot of miners were buying our graphics cards. And we knew, by the way, like, Jensen is so smart. I remember walking into the executive meeting and we were talking about it, and he's like, listen, guys, are you sure you want to do this? And everyone's like, why? He goes, this could end really badly when the price of the crypto changes and people basically turn these gaming cards back onto the secondary market. So just a guy with a lot of foresight, and you got to give him credit for sticking with his vision, and NVIDIA is just a tale of grit, tenacity, and belief. And my first conversation with him in 2001, when I first met him, we didn't talk about gaming. This is way back, and we talked about compute, and we talked about how GPUs were going to be used. Like parallel computing and accelerated computing was the future. What we didn't know was that AI was going to be the killer application at that time. We thought it would be some form of high performance computing or some myriad of high performance computing applications. It turned out we found the second killer app for GPUs, which was AI. The first was graphics. So that's kind of a little snapshot. I hope that kind of partly answers your question at least, but amazing experience. Wouldn't give it up for the world, and made me, so much smarter and so much better, and gave me the tools for what I'm able to do now.
That's so awesome. Before I got into crypto when I was pretty young, right? I was 12 years old when I started trading crypto, but even before that, I had like a extreme fascination with financial markets, and I was also like a lifelong gamer, like from the age of like 5 years old on, like just obsessed with everything video games. This whole podcast thing feels like a full circle moment for me because I started Twitch streaming when I was in 5th grade. I started a gaming stock newsletter when I was 11. The first stock I ever wrote about when NVIDIA, it was in April of 2016 when NVIDIA was at the time $36. It was NVIDIA. And that was like my initial, like everyone, I would write about 3 companies every week, but every week NVIDIA was always in it, and people were like, will you write about something else? And like in hindsight, it's like, I should have wrote about NVIDIA more. I should have just been the NVIDIA guy. But so like I think it's one of the best companies in the world still. And it's really cool hearing your perspective about it.
You know what's interesting? I didn't join because I was a gamer. Like when I joined, people like, oh, but you're not a gamer. I mean, as you know, I really like sports, regular sports. I watch basketball. I play every sport. I'm a very physical person. I did gaming, but honestly, like I'm from the generation where if I have a couple hours, I'm going to get out on a tennis court. But I knew when I joined, I have a computer graphics background. I was trained at Brown in computer graphics with a guy named Andy Van Dam. So I understood, and he respected that, and I understood computing. But I knew at the time, my whole mission when I joined is like I said, Jensen, I'm going to find us applications for graphics that are not gaming, and then I'm going to also help us find applications for GPUs that have nothing to do with graphics. So at that time, we were developing CUDA, right? We were just starting to develop. There was a guy named Ian Buck who built it, and then there was a good friend of mine, David Kirk, who I just saw. We went to the Super Bowl together. He was the biggest evangelist and took CUDA to the next level. And so I took it upon myself to go find applications for graphics processors that were not graphics related. So this was my passion for the whole 20 years I was there. So, even though gaming was important, and, they still got a great gaming business, I knew eventually that parallel computing and accelerated computing was going to take over the future. And it just took like about 15 years longer than I thought. And I think I don't know, Jensen might have known, but didn't tell us it was going to take that long. But I'd hoped it would happen within 10 years, but I stayed there 20, and I finally saw it to fruition.
Jeff, that's why we have you here. You're a futurist at heart. David, moving on to you. I'm just going to swing for the fences here. What makes Morpheus the best decentralized AI?
So what's interesting about Morpheus as a protocol is it's a marketplace. So Morpheus is not training any models. It's not a frontier model. It's a place where you can pick any model you want. So if you want the latest GLM, the latest Kimi model, any open source that's out there today, which is rivaling the closed source results at this point, you can just route it through Morpheus. And what's really unique is it has this model and pioneered this model of staking for inference. So just like I own my Bitcoin, right? As long as I've got that private key, I can send money to anybody in the world. I want to own my intelligence. And so if I own the token and I stake it for inference, my agent never turns off, right? I don't run out of Claude credits, right? It doesn't fall over, at 2 a.m, right? It just keeps going. And I think that difference of owning your intelligence versus renting it from a big company is going to be really key here, because the value is going to flow to the people that own their AI. Otherwise, you're going to get harvested and you are going to be the yield for everybody else that owns an AI that's influencing you. So that's why I've spent so much time ever since I read the Morpheus white paper. Is like, yep, this is going to be critical to the future of humanity. And it feels like almost in the last few weeks, we've finally crossed that chasm with OpenClaw, where everybody who's not an engineer all of a sudden is downloading an agent and they're getting to that point like, okay, well, how do I connect in a brain? And you either got to sign up for Claude or you can use something like Morpheus. So it's been really cool to see everything we've built the last 2 years finally now getting plugged in to these personal AIs. So yeah, it's been fun the last couple of weeks.
Rob, it would not be fair if I didn't give you the opportunity to tell us why you think that BitTensor is the best crypto AI. So I'll give you the floor.
Morpheus is fascinating. And I also share David's view that, the emergence of Moltbook and the AI agent era now upon us is the perfect illustration of the future of AI, which is decentralized, right? It's very clear that everyone is just going to have their own AGI sitting locally on whatever device you want. And in that world, I don't see where the moats for the frontier labs come from. And obviously, Jeff, I'm curious your thoughts on this, and we could have that debate. But my view is that the frontier layer is going to get commoditized and the equity value is going to converge on the application layer, which I think is a world that benefits BitTensor in a meaningful way. So as a segue into Tau, it's the true AI layer one. That is what I'd kind of start with. It was conceived of in the 2010s. It was purpose-built specifically for AI by two AI experts that happened to be kind of early to Bitcoin and crypto libertarians. It was completely fair launched, no grassroots movement, no VC pre-mine. They kind of replicated the immaculate conception that was Bitcoin. So 21 million cap, just like Bitcoin. And they've kind of proven that you can mine for compute and intelligence in an analogous way to how Bitcoin mines for electricity. And they're doing that via these subnets that are built on top of BitTensor. But there are dozens of breakthroughs that are happening at the subnet level right now. For instance, 2 weeks ago, subnet 3 Templar, it's a decentralized training subnet. And it was a 72 billion parameter model, which, right now is a pretty small count. But a couple of years ago, it was pretty meaningful. But the co-founder of Anthropic, Jack Clark, was actually in the comments applauding them just 2 weeks ago. We expect that there will be kind of a breakout moment at some point this year with one of the subnets. The technical breakthroughs are incredible. What one of these subnets now needs to do is actually build a unicorn business around these technical breakthroughs, but we believe this is imminent. I would also just say, crypto AI as a category is going to be massive. This is, in our view, clearly the next big wave for crypto itself, and it's going to be a rising tide that lifts all boats. Our view is that BitTensor is going to be one of the big winners, though.
Sorry, I'll just jump in quickly here. Do you foresee that more being on, I know obviously with X402, and we were talking about some of this before we started recording, but crypto and blockchain rails for AI payments is obviously becoming a big conversation. You just made some great points about decentralized and blockchain rails for inference compute. What kind of side of that do you think this next evolution is going to be focused on? Like what makes, I guess, kind of AI crypto so exciting? Is it the payment side, or is it kind of the ownership of inference, or how do you see that going? Or maybe it's both.
I'm happy to jump in. So, I think that the beauty of BitTensor is that it's just this Ethereum-like foundational layer, and these subnets are doing all kinds of really interesting things, whether it's decentralized training of large language models to decentralized compute. For instance, Shoots subnet 64 is the largest provider of open source inference in the entire world per Open Router. But there's also kind of AI applied towards drug discovery and sports prediction and weather prediction. I think the distribution of value is still kind of an open question. But it's kind of BitTensor's building for a world of hundreds of thousands of different specialist models, kind of this bazaar of AI, as Balaji calls it, as opposed to just a single cathedral, like a single ASI that's coming out of a corporate lab. And I think the broader vision for BitTensor is that they're trying to build a worldwide web of intelligence, and something that would be kind of synergistic with a Morpheus or any of these other crypto protocols, crypto AI protocols.
Is your view of the world, you're not going to have these huge, big data centers doing everybody's inference. It's going to be decentralized and kind of bid out to, around the internet. I'm just curious, like, how you envision the compute infrastructure looking.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fragmented. When I get this question, I usually kind of cite the example of Bitcoin, which is it's the world's largest supercomputer by 500 times in aggregate, but it is completely distributed. And so that story played out with the donation of electricity with Bitcoin, and our view is that it absolutely could play out within the GPU context as well. Except with the donation of compute and with the donation of intelligence to this network called BitTensor. I think the frontier labs, and I'm curious your standpoint on this, but they're already talking about the need for distributed training and distributed inference just because of energy requirements, right? Once you start putting like millions of GPUs inside of a single data center, I think theoretically you could shut down a state's power grid at a certain point. And what BitTensor is trying to do is, you have millions of GPUs distributed across the world. You have hundreds of thousands of AI devs, if not millions, scattered across the world. What if we could kind of stitch all of those GPUs and all of those people together in a single location to build open source AI? What BitTensor is doing fundamentally is monetarily incentivizing open source AI in a very unique way. But I think that's kind of my view of the world and BitTensor's view of the world. But I'm also curious to hear your thoughts coming from the NVIDIA background.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. On the training side, I could definitely see distributed training, although there's a lot of data that needs to move back and forth on the training cycle.
Right.
That one is more logical to me. From the inferencing side, I think there's a latency issue, and I don't think anybody has fully grasped the fact that, I can't really do voice interaction right now with, ChatGPT or Gemini because it's way too slow and there's too much latency. Eventually, I'm going to expect my inferencing to be real time. So, the quality of service and the latency, could be an issue there. That's my initial thoughts on it. But I wanted to go back to something you said earlier in terms of commoditization of large language models. I said this before the call. Like, I made a mistake. I thought they were going to be commoditized already. I'll admit that. But what I didn't, and the reason I think the technology that goes into it is going to be commoditized. The data too seems to be not as big a deal either. Nobody seems to care about IP or other data protection. I think we thought that was going to be the case, but it appears to me like whatever governance we have right now doesn't really care because we're competing with the rest of the world for compute and intelligence. So if we limit access to data, that's going to be a problem. But what I didn't fully grasp was that just compute resources are so scarce right now that if anybody could get enough compute resources to go build a large language model, I think it would be fully commoditized. But the problem is you need a lot of money, you need to buy a lot of compute, and very few people have that. Not only do very few people have the money, but even if you have the money, as these data center wars, we call them, are showing, the people with the money are trying to do whatever they can to lock up every piece of data center. So once that's all solved, I think it's going to be completely commoditized. And then, as you say, the action is going to move to the application layer, which is where we fundamentally place the thesis for our fund. But I think, as Aidan said, I'm a futurist, so I'm always early. And so I will tend to miss the run up of the stuff that eventually crashes, I think. And yeah, I don't want to say it too out loud, but I think once somebody starts giving away a free LLM, which could happen, And I think I told you guys, I know NVIDIA is working on open source models, and they actually have compute. They actually have money in compute. So it's in their best interest to make sure that nobody gets a grasp on it. Anyway, those were my thoughts, but I think you're right. I think everything you're saying makes total sense to me. I think on the training side for sure. On the inferencing might take longer. I'd be interested in other people's thoughts as well.
David, do you want to jump in? I mean, I had some thoughts in response there, but
Sure.
please.
I think it all depends on the use case, right? My laptop right now can do almost perfect transcription of a meeting, right? And it can do it locally and I can do it privately. I, record all those meetings, create a transcript, and then it can give me these beautiful summaries of 30 pages of text into 2 pages and never miss a next step or action item that comes out of that. So we saw the open source and local models catch up on text. Now they're catching up on image, right? They're still a little behind on video, but they're getting pretty good. But I think there will always be a frontier of the most complex, the most bespoke stuff that somebody is monetizing on top. And I don't think it's either or. You're going to have an explosion of both, right? I think the open source, it's already up to 30% of all AI usage, up from 14% just a few months ago. I think it's 80% of the usage going forward is open source models. To the points that Rob is making, is there is so much compute that isn't inside the 4 walls of OpenAI or Grok or others. People forget the scale of the compute that people own, at the edge. Before Ethereum switched to proof of stake, they were using as much GPU power as trained ChatGPT 4 times 50, right? And so there's a lot of people in the world that are holding compute. And as the models get more and more efficient, right, I think, it's really going to shift the landscape. So you have retail users, you'll have, business and enterprise users. They have different considerations. But I think I go back to, again, what matters to me is who owns the outcome. I really want an AI that's aligned to me, not in some, fantastical, theoretical way. Like very literally, I own the private key to the wallet and the value it's creating flows to me, not to somebody else, right? Because those are the options at this point. You own an AI and has 200 IQ and it's protecting you, or you're getting farmed by somebody else's 200 IQ agent that is manipulating you into different behavior. And that's what we've had with Web 2, right? All these trillion-dollar companies have made an enormous amount of money off of your attention, right? And manipulating your behavior, like just a little ad, just a little poke here, and you buy this instead of that. They have monetized per person thousands of dollars a year and given you back maybe $100 of free software that mined all of your data, right? So to go back to your question about X402 Alpha, this is what changes the equation. This is what blows up all the SaaS models, is I don't need to pay the SaaS model anymore. My intelligence can spin up that website and I can do it myself for free, right? And so I'm literally in this process right now of switching off all of my SaaS applications. As I can do it for free myself with my agent, I just turn off that switch. Like I've been paying for website hosting for a decade, right? $100 a month or whatever it is. And I realized yesterday, I was like, why am I doing this? Like my agent can now do this for free. And so I'm rebuilding all my websites. It takes 10 minutes and I'm turning off that switch. Hey, which the next one I can do? What about my CRM? What about my accounting system? Like all of these, it's not going to take long. You're talking a couple of years and the landscape's going to radically change.
I love that point, and I think it's very well said. I was talking to a analyst at an investment bank, a really, really smart guy, and he was telling me that he feels like that the biggest bear case for any open source technology is that it gets rid of the scapegoat. Because if you have a Calendly and you're a big corporation and you send it out and then for some reason a meeting doesn't like register on your calendar, you're like, that's Calendly's fault. And you can like be like, hey, that's their problem and everyone gets to keep their job. If you create open source Calendly in-house and it messes up, the only person to blame is yourself. And I put a tweet out about this the other day. I think it's very parallel to why big corporations go and hire McKinsey to make a big decision. Like, they actually have a pretty good grasp as to what decision they want to make. But if for some reason it doesn't go well, it's an insurance policy on everyone being able to keep their jobs, because they say, well, the McKinsey consultant told me that this was a good idea. And that's why no one gets fired when you hire McKinsey.
I buy the CYA argument for enterprises, which is why I still think there'll be that 20%. And you'll have, oh, it's OpenAI's fault. It's, whoever else's fault. There's definitely an aspect of that. But I can tell you retail doesn't care about that. It's cheaper, it's better, it's faster. They don't have any of the considerations of company. And maybe that's the line of differentiation.
I think the space that could most easily be disrupted, but you're watching two parallel technological races of how fast can you create an open source alternative and how fast will robotics take the job? That's the dichotomy. So for instance, like, I would say that there's a world where Uber drivers come together and vibe code their own Uber that has no fees, and they can create like a perfectly fair like rideshare market. But say that happens, I would give it 2, maybe 3 years before Waymo just takes that completely. Same thing with like DoorDash, right? There's no world where in 5 years the guy who's like the thing that is delivering my burrito on DoorDash is not like a robot. So it's a very interesting arms race.
That's what goes back to who owns the edge of the network, right? And if it's you, then your agent becomes something you can monetize. There's a lot of intangible things that aren't going to be done by somebody else's AI because only I have the relationship, or I'm only physically in a certain place. And so this is what you want to do, post AGI, is I want my agent acting on my behalf, making me money. That's actually my definition of AGI, artificially generated income. When a majority of your income is produced by your agent, you have reached AGI. AGI is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet, right? That's the world we live in. A lot of programmers who are running a lot of jobs and their agent is making most of their money. And so think about it from the other perspective. I think people aren't ready, and this is a big narrative violation. People aren't ready for how many jobs AI will create. The first thing, a guy here in Austin did was spin up an agent, and it hired a human, and then it hired another, and then it hired another. Like, there is a value in like agents, and then there's stuff they can't do. They end up hiring humans. I don't know if you guys saw that marketplace for hire a human pop up in the OpenClaw, world, but like, it's happening, right? And it turns out humans are really useful for a lot of things that machines can't or never will do, right? So it's going to be interesting how fast it deprecates jobs versus how fast it creates them. Maybe there's a lag there, but I'm actually pretty optimistic that the free market will find useful things for humans to do.
Are those the physical jobs that Aiden thinks are going to be taken over by robots in 5 years, or are those different jobs?
I think they're different jobs. And again, if you've got your own agent, I'll give you a simple example. Like, I've got 15,000 connections on LinkedIn. I've been speaking at conferences for 12 years. I've spoken at 100 AI and crypto conferences. I can't even remember all the cool people that I've met and that I would love to work with if I had time to reach out to them or to tell them what I'm doing or whatever. But imagine all of a sudden I've got a world where I have an agent and they have an agent, and I'm working on something. It knows the context, it can reach out to them, and all of a sudden we're collaborating on something, right? I've already got all of that value, but it's way underutilized compared to what I could get if I had no cap on the intelligence and time I had to go reach out and work with those different people. So
I agree with that. I have the same issue. Yeah, same issue.
Like,
David,
I know all those
the
people.
Is the implication of AGI being a function of how much money it makes you, that your net worth will be correlated to how much compute you have?
100%. I would say it's not only that, but it's that times the real value you can create. So you could have infinite amount of intelligence, but if you don't know anybody and you don't have any wisdom and you don't have a particular view on the world and you're not really trying to accomplish anything, like, I think what becomes really critical is agency. Like, high agency people that are really driven are going to get 1,000x on their productivity. The guy that wants funny videos is just going to ask for a lot of funny videos. Like there's a whole thing in the internet where like it made smart people smarter and actually made dumb people dumber because that's what they selected for as their outcomes. So when you set up your OpenClaw, you set up a persona. What are you trying to accomplish? I spent a lot of time curating, here's my life goals, here's my values, here's my principles, here's the things I'm trying to accomplish. Now help me go make progress on each of these categories. And it's been amazing, right? But if you didn't have any of that wisdom and your goal is funny video, make me laugh, that's what it's going to give you.
I think what you're saying is there has to be, if I just let my AI be owned by OpenAI, I may have no uniqueness. Like videos are going to be created by AI, funny videos. So I think what I hear you saying is, in order for me to have a unique persona, I have to have a unique AI because it becomes an extension. What if my contact, you're 15,000, I probably have more than you on LinkedIn. I was like first 100 people on LinkedIn. I got an invite. I didn't try and I got a lot, but I can't tap into those people because what happens is I feel like we're born with like a finite amount of memory, whatever number of, how many gigs of memory. And once you exceed that, you can no longer remember like 15,000 people. But I think what you're saying is right. And to Aiden's point, like I think that the role of labor, like capital and labor have this weird relationship in the economy. I took some economics, right? The first stage of like minimizing the value of labor was the internet, right? The world that Thomas Friedman wrote, the world was flat. That's when all of a sudden, call centers, everything was happening. And even now it's ridiculous. I called the Wells Fargo to try to deal with something really important. I couldn't understand what the person was saying in the Philippines, but it basically, the internet kind of was phase one of like.
That's why you have to own you have to own your bank.
Yeah,
that's why we're getting you into Bitcoin.
Oh my God,
yeah.
I'm totally committed to that. But the next wave is if one gigawatt data center can do the same amount of bidding and work as a million people, who benefits from that AI running in that data center? It's not those million people. It's the people who have compute or capital to buy compute or invest in that data center. So we're entering into this weird world. I mean, I'm not necessarily right now believing that you have 3 years to make money and have capital or you're never going to have it. But I do think there's something to that you either going to have capital or some uniqueness, like whether I don't know if AIs will be able to build these relationships, David, like some creativity and some uniqueness. But I don't know, like after everything's the playing field's leveled, like you and I have these relationships, we have personas, but how do you start from the bottom when you don't have that ability to hustle, create knowledge and thought leadership, and then now you're leveraging it into the digital world and the AI world. But what if you started from zero? What would you do?
Right.
Well, let's
call
this
one.
what it is.
I mean, like what's happening? Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say it's an intelligence.
Yeah. I was going to. It is an intelligence explosion, a la Nick Bostrom, that's for sure. We were talking before this, but it really does feel like we're taking off right now. Opus 4.6, GPT 5.3 codex, but then you also do have like the Mini Max 2.5 that just came out, right? That's just as capable as Opus 4.6. It's faster, it's 20 times cheaper, and it's come out of China. So like, I actually do in the present feel as though the frontier models are commoditized. And it's going like the production of these tokens is completely commoditized in my view, but it's going to be the orchestration of these tokens where the value actually converges on, which obviously is the application layer. But yeah, I mean, AI is mastering software engineering, right? Like Dario Amodei was in Davos 2 weeks ago, and he's like, virtually all of the code internally at Anthropic is being driven by AI, and that will certainly be the case within 12 months. And every single remote job is simply just a software engineering problem to automate. And I mean, I have more radical views on, the effect this is going to have on the labor market personally. But Jeff, I share your view, you kind of have this paradox of like, how do you convert your labor into capital? How do you acquire capital if your labor is worthless? And there's going to be an entire kind of new economic paradigm that we're entering into very, very quickly. But I hope we land the plane correctly. But going, decentralized AI feels like it's kind of the best route to go down, as opposed to just having a few god kings in Silicon Valley that own all the equity of these AI corporations. So yeah, hopefully decentralized AI ends up winning out here.
Rob, when we had our conversation, like our individual interview, you gave this really interesting take about how you felt like when countries fight over AI, the incentives shift towards open source. Could you summarize that point again? Because I think I think the panel would really like that.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of playing out within the microcosm of like the corporate AI labs in the United States right now, where you just have this endless leapfrogging dynamic. Like as David and I were saying before the call, right? You have Gemini 3, and then Opus 4.6 comes out, and then Gemini 3 DeepThink comes out, and it's like the frontier on Arc AGI 2 or whatever the benchmark is. And if one lab starts to run away with AI for whatever reason, maybe Anthropic gets into a self-recursive loop because they have the best AI coding abilities, then the other labs are going to try to push towards open source and decentralized to try and handicap the one that's pulling ahead. And so we kind of saw this with like Meta, like their open source initiative. Like I don't think they were under any illusion that they were going to be on the frontier, but maybe they could commoditize the technology and that could be strategic for them. And that's also playing out with China, right? Like China does not have the frontier chips because of moratoriums, et cetera. So what are they doing? It seems as though it's a national priority to push open source to try and kneecap the US AI industry. And it seemingly is working right now. And you could kind of imagine, like, I mean, with BitTensor, for instance, right? Like if China came to conclusion that the United States was running away with AI, they might not only push for open source, but they might push for decentralized as well. And conversely, if China started to go AI supremacy, the United States might arrive at the same conclusion. It's kind of analogous to pushing for Bitcoin within the fiat context as well. Just pushing for decentralization.
Yeah.
David, what do you think about that?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. We were in a pretty dark timeline in 2023 where all the models were really centralized and the government was talking about censoring open source. And when Llama at first leaked their model and all of a sudden there was a good open source alternative, it definitely flipped the tables and forced the others to take open source more seriously. And so big credit to them. I don't think people were expecting for them to roll in and be the hero, but that was critical at that moment. And then in 24, all the regulatory barriers went away, right? The new administration swept away the executive order, all the limits that they were trying to place on, data centers and access and KYC and bans on open source. None of that, now applies. And so there's just been this open field for anybody to build as fast as they can. And I think, going back to the question, like, how do you benefit? Be early. Your proximity to the intelligence explosion will tell me how much wealth you have the next 10 years. Just like how your proximity to Bitcoin in 2012, and whether you learned it, studied it, applied it, bought it, hold it, like that was a wealth explosion in 2012 to, let's say, 2017. Like if you were there, you had enormous outsized outcomes. So the single most important thing I can do for my family right now is onboard them to this technology, teach them about what's going on, show them how to own it for themselves and put it to work, right? And it's not years. We're talking weeks. Like the difference of your proximity to an explosion, it might be days, right? Because it's in a recursive loop, not of the models, but of the skills right now. I go on every day and see 50 new things that have been launched on OpenClaw, and I grab the best ones for my agent, and all of a sudden it has new superpowers, right? In fact, I've always been in the middle from technical and non-technical, but with OpenClaw, I was able to improve my own agent. I added security skills. I gave it a wallet. I taught it about X402. It has the ability to access Morpheus for inference, right? And so all of a sudden I have a self-healing agent that never turns off that will run forever. And I just released that as a skill on Claude Hub, and it's called Everclaw. And so if you go for Everclaw inference on ClawHub, you'll find it, or just go to everclaw.xyz. And there it is. And anybody can, it's all open source. So anybody can grab that skill. And now they've got the security, the wallet, the forever inference, all of these things. That's the loop. It's the skill loop. We don't even have to wait for the models to get any better. We got millions of people running as fast as they can to improve this thing. And then we're just going back and forth on it every day. So I think we're there. I think the takeoff is a lot. It's already here for me. And if you don't have an OpenClaw yet, it's like not having a computer and trying to explain to somebody like the benefits of the internet. Like you physically have to have the thing. And I'm convinced like this is the thing you need to even experience what's happening. And there's no longer any technical barrier for somebody to do that.
Let me ask you a question. I agree with that. As a VC, I'm a VC, right? What if I don't want the thing? Like, I'll get the thing. How does someone go invest in the thing? Like, what's the derivative of the thing that you go invest in right now?
So to Rob's point, I'm always a fan of the FAT protocol thesis, right? So since 2016, when this was a paper released by Union Square Ventures, famously describing where they thought the value would aggregate, it's tended to aggregate to the tokens, right? So everything built on Ethereum flowed value into ETH, right? ETH is worth more than every project built on top of Ethereum combined. So look at the tokens in decentralized AI, Morpheus, Venice, BitTensor, Akash. Like these are all different components of the same tech stack. And I think Rob is correct. That's where the value is going to flow because no matter what gets built in this tech stack, people need to own more to access the inference or the agents. They need to own Tau if they want to participate in those subnets. Like people need Venice if they want to use the Venice API. Like that beautiful, simple, easy to use, universal ownership layer. That's, I think, where the value aggregates. That's been my thesis the last 3 years. We saw a big hype cycle in 2024, right? Everybody said, oh, decentralized AI was here. It wasn't there. It was too early. None of the primitives existed. X402 didn't exist. MCP didn't exist. 8004 didn't exist. Like we now have all the building blocks. So this new wave in 26 feels very different. It's not being driven by memes and hype. It's being driven by real world usage. So I'm seeing all the usage numbers go up and to the right. And that's what matters to me because price follows utility over time.
Completely. It does feel like we're, DeFi summer, we're going to have a DAI. I don't know if it's going to be summer, fall, or winter, but like it's going to come, some equivalent. There's going to be that killer app. But I think that's extremely well said. Like everything you just said, David, I resonate with. But in particular, like proximity, like your proximity to the frontier of AI is going to dictate how much capital you acquire and build over the next few years. And I couldn't agree with that more. What BitTensor is doing, so like I kind of talked about how like, the frontier layer, in my view, is getting commoditized because you have like all these open source alternatives coming out, whether it's Meta or China. What BitTensor is trying to do is be that except for applications. So for instance, there's like a decentralized cursor. It's called Ridges. It's in our portfolio, Subnet 62. And they through the mining dynamic have created a model that is on par with Cursor, but substantially cheaper. So what BitTensor is trying to do is 80 to 100% of the quality of what you would get from a frontier VC-backed company in the Valley, but a fraction of the price. And that is kind of like what BitTensor is going after currently.
I think the elephant in the room, and it'd be bad to be on an AI panel and not ask it. Everyone wonders, is AI a bubble? So we'll start with Jeff, then David, then Rob. Is AI a bubble?
So the short answer is I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that. I do think over the long run, AI is, a real technology. It's a major breakthrough. I think we're really in just the early stages of it, to be honest with you right now. I think there's so many more layers that we can build. Whether it's a bubble or not, I don't know because I see the long-term value. I'm just not sure if it's going to be a straight line to the top or whether we're going to have to go through what we normally do with new technologies, kind of an overbuild and what is the Gartner whatever the curve is, where it's overly, the expectations are too large, and then there's this trough of disillusionment. I hope we don't go through that, but it's very possible. But I do believe that it's up and to the right, and this is different. Like David said, this is different than other technology cycles, because the AI never sleeps. The build goes. The AI doesn't have like ADD like I might have. Like it can concentrate for more than 15 minutes at a time, and not have to go take a drink of water or something like that. So I think it could be different. The reason why I think it could be different is because of that. It doesn't require, massive amounts of people necessarily to basically build a technology. Like if you think about the last cycles, like companies, like we're in the same, I feel like we're in this velocity of money cycle now based on compute, because compute, like I said, a gigawatt of compute could be 1 million people, like substitute for 1 million people. In the last cycles where all the money was being raised, they were mainly like hiring people, and most of those people were really bad, probably right? Inefficient. Like having worked for a big corporation, even as great as NVIDIA, like I'd say like 95% of the work gets done, the real work gets done by 5% of the people, something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I've seen this
That's
throughout
Price's Law, right?
what? Yeah, I've
That's
seen this
Price's
throughout.
Law.
Yeah. I've seen this throughout my career, by the way. Like I was a lawyer at one point. I used to do billable hours, and the speed, like I did the billing because I was a partner. I had all these, the speed at which the fastest person could do the task was like 100 times greater. And going back to NVIDIA, I think you have a few guys, including Jensen. He gets a lot of work done because when your processors that good. But anyway, I think that's why this may not, whatever's happening, I think that's why the bubble may not pop this time. But the likelihood is, even though we're up and to the right, that we could have a deflation and a reinflation.
Most people talk about bubbles as in price bubbles. Like, I don't know if the price of Nvidia goes up or down tomorrow or the next 6 months. Like, it's unknowable. Maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. The market will figure it out. But to Jeff's point, the utility's there, right? I remember the early days of the internet. A lot of the internet bubble was like companies self-trading pretend revenue and eyeballs, and like, there's going to be 1 billion users, but there were only 50 million online so far, right? In 99 or whatever. And so that bubble got way ahead of itself. The difference here is there's real revenue. Like, you don't even have to say, oh, it's going to be a thing in the future. OpenAI has 800 million users. Grok has, 700 million users, whatever number of people are on X, right? Like, that's a lot of the planet, right? You're going to get to 3-4 billion people in the next couple of years of people using this technology, virtually anybody with a smartphone, right? Well, and of which there are 5.5 billion people. Even the guy in Africa or Asia, they've all got an Android phone. It might be a $50 or $100 one, but it runs all this stuff, right? And so I don't think there's going to be a long gap between like the expectation and the reality of what it can do. And that's why I go back to revenue. Artificially generated income, that's the ultimate measure. Not what IQ it is, not what benchmark it passed. Like, can it create value for me? If the answer is yes, I'm never turning it off. Like, I can't imagine a world at this point in which I would, live without using AI every day. And that'll be the rule, not the exception.
Yeah, I think that's all well said, and I'm definitely more in like we're in a super cycle right now, Cam. I think we'll probably get to AGI before any kind of conventionally defined financial bubble pops. I also just do not think that the hype exceeds the reality right now. I think people are underestimating the gravity of change that is coming right now. I think if anything, white collar labor is a bubble that is going to get popped. And I know that's like a super super controversial take, but I think the total value of white collar labor is something in the order of $50 trillion globally right now, and that is the total addressable market that these startups are defining right now when they're getting funded by VCs. They're saying we want to go out and we want to commoditize that, and if that plays out, I mean, there's going to have to be some new economic definition. I think capitalism itself is going to have to get rewritten by all of this. humans are not going to be the smartest entities on this planet by 2030. Like, I don't think anyone has any idea. Sam Altman, Elon, Dario, no one really has any idea of what's gonna come after that point. And we're probably closer to that than we are to COVID. I kind of routinely say that when my mom is asking me about this stuff. But I think another controversial take. I mean, I think BitTensor could be the thing that does pop the AI bubble. I don't think the frontier models have many moats, and they're commoditizing themselves in real time. And kind of like what the Chinese models are doing to the frontier labs, BitTensor, I think, is increasingly doing to the rest of AI startups. And if you're able to get 95% of the quality for 5% of the price, that is a wrecking ball to the hundreds of billions of dollars of equity value that's being created in the Valley right now. But at the end of the day, I mean, 10 years from now, like we're ushering in a new age of abundance. Like, Demis Hassabis, probably the most conservative guy at the head of these AI labs, is saying, this is going to be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution, but 10 times faster. I mean, that is profound. That is like new civilizational paradigm kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I think the bubble is in who captures the equity value and not whether the transformation is real. But I don't know either, to be honest with you. But those are just that's kind of like
I think
my stream of consciousness.
One
Yeah.
danger I didn't mention, and you probably have a different take on that because you're focused more on decentralized AI, but I do think we're compute limited right now for all the things that need to get done. And it could be like that for a while. It could get even worse because the problem is, forget about chips and data centers. There's a power issue, and building these data centers isn't as simple as you and I have been led to believe, because I know a lot of people building data. There's a lot of hardware sitting around that can't get plugged in because there's either no power or no cooling. So to me, that's a big danger right now. And if you talk to all the foundation model companies, they all say the same thing. Hey, our business could be 5 times larger if we could just double or triple our compute. So that tells me like that's a big potential limiter. In the long run, it'll be okay, but in the short run, there could be just a little bit of overinvestment if you can't actually produce the product, the service, whatever that you're raising all this money for. So that's my only caution that I would.
Yeah, that could be the catalyst for a bubble. It's not because there's lack of demand; it's because there's lack of power, right?
Yeah, lack of supply.
I do think.
Yeah.
I do think there's also like a room for a lot of like compute and algorithmic efficiency, though. For instance, like the human brain is in orders of magnitude more efficient than anything we're producing, whether it's Blackwell chips or Rubin or Feynman chips. So we have a lot of room to go, but we're certainly bottlenecked right now. I think a crazy thing too is that the models of today, 2026, were produced from the CapEx and the older generation of chips. I think like circa 2024, right, David? And so now we have like $600 billion going into CapEx, like more than the Manhattan Project in a single year. The progress we're going to see over the next few years, I feel like people, and I can't even do this, but like thinking in exponentials is so difficult. You can't just simply take the last 3 years since ChatGPT came out and say, okay, by the next election, we're going to be 2 times, where we were. In reality, it's going to be like 10 to 20 times, maybe even more than that.
You're right. I think people can't think about that with respect to finance and stocks and money. And I think the same in technology. Yeah, they can't think exponential. It's really hard.
This
and
conversation
Jeff, the reason I'm not worried,
gave me.
I was just going to say the reason I'm not worried.
This conversation gave me like a slight epiphany. A slight epiphany, and David, I'd say a lot of your comments inspired this. Is the harsh reality of nature and up until this point is that study after study has proven that IQ is the single highest determinant of your success in life, across the board. And that hurts a lot of people because IQ is 80% genetic. But going forward, possibly the single greatest determinant of your success is going to be the number of parameters on your personal AI model.
Maybe. The studies are IQ and socialization. So a hyper socialized person can outperform somebody with a higher IQ. But if you're both high IQ and well socialized, that's effectively the two main superpowers, because it's your ability to articulate things. Like, using these AIs boils down to, what can you tell it you want it to do? It can do anything, but it's bottlenecked by what you actually can articulate that you want to accomplish.
Correct.
Right. And so I think that will
Correct.
continue to accelerate. And Aiden, I want to go back to college. So I dropped out after one semester to build tech companies. And the people who have asked me about my college degree is 0 people since. And so I don't know how far you are in, but completing your degree may be the single most expensive thing you ever do, if it even slows you down by a week as far as your proximity to the intelligence explosion. So I'm just putting it out there. Like, I might, pay some amount of money for a degree. I wouldn't pay $1 million for a degree. I wouldn't pay $100 million for a degree. Just putting it out there. Sorry, Aiden's mom. But.
Yeah.
No,
I
agree with that, and I'm going to clip that, and I'm going to send that to my mom and probably my professors, because that is very important. For the record, I got on a call with Will, and Will told me to stay in school, even though Will did in fact drop out of Duke. So that we might have to have a college.
I think you have like 3 weeks left of college or something. Like, that's how close we are talking to the finish line.
All right.
And apparently those 3 weeks are extremely expensive, according to David. So,
depends on how you
like I
use
said,
it.
if we get this on this trending page, I'm doing it the very next day, and I'll record it for everybody. We're coming to the end of our time here. This has been my single favorite piece of content we've ever put out with Beluga. Like, this has been an incredibly enjoyable conversation. You guys are all extremely intelligent. I guess capping off that, David, sort of your point, I just saw a study, and it was lifetime expected earnings, and it was high math skills, high social skills, and that was like the highest, right? Like, if you had both good math skills and good social skills, you were expected to make a lot of money in life. If you had high math skills and low social skills, it drops off a cliff. But if you have low math skills and high social skills, the delta between high math skills and high social skills and high social skills and low math ability was like 10%. It was maybe, I think, less. Like, it was very marginal, because a lot of people are very smart, but not everyone can articulate their belief. And I think that especially as we go into like an AGI future, you're going to see, I'm very long, like third places. I'm very long, like human connection and like in-person events, right? Like, Jeff and I met at a Warriors game. And I think, like, beyond your ability to use AI, there's going to be an equal sort of like emphasis on being able to have these like very important discussions, and not only do it, over like an online medium, but also be able to do it in person. So the way we'll wrap up this panel is we'll go to each panelist, and I just want you to give us like 1 to 2 sentences on what you want people to remember. So we'll start with you, Jeff. What do you want people to remember and take away from this panel?
I think a great discussion. I think I want people to remember things are moving really, really fast right now. And personally, it's been the last 3 months that I finally had the aha moment that I was like, I saw the curve go like this. And I don't know why that is. It sounds like, Rob, you're in the same boat. So I would remember that. And then I would also remember that, there's still a lot of innovation left to be done, and we're just on the early tip of the iceberg of AI, and things like decentralized may be the next big wave. And I think it's interesting enough that we better go explore it, but there's plenty that's still to be done, and there's plenty of opportunity.
David, we'll swing it over to you.
I'd emphasize the same thing. The single most important thing that I've probably done in my life was tell my family about Bitcoin in 2012. Right? My parents, who were working paycheck to paycheck, are now retired. Right? It was transformative for my brothers and sisters. And so that was sending an email. It was having a few conversations. It was taking it seriously. And so I think we're at that same moment again. Like, if you haven't explained what's going on to the people closest to you, you are doing them a disservice. And most people are not neck deep in this. They don't understand how far it's come in the last 6 months. They may be oblivious and they think it's still funny cat videos. You need to have that conversation. You should have it this week.
Agreed.
Rob,
yeah, this is like
you get the last word.
Yeah. This is like February 2020, COVID circulating around, no one's taking it seriously, and then the entire world is in disarray a month later. That's the moment we're in with AI right now. Absolutely. And yeah, what would I say? I mean, the future is bright. I think it's going to be a tough transition for the next 5 to 10 years, but it's going to happen quick. I think it's the best time to ever be an entrepreneur in the history of business building equity value. I think people are going to have to become forced entrepreneurs, but it's better if you elect to do that now, discretionarily. But yeah, I mean, we're entering a renaissance. We're adding to the sum total of intelligence on this planet by many, many orders of magnitude. And I think we're going to have radical abundance. All of these, everything that we fight over, wars, poverty, disease, scarcity is going to get eliminated by all of this intelligence. But yeah, marry yourself to the AI, as David said. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but I think it's great to kind of engage in some level of stoicism here, because it's going to be an interesting transition, but it's going to be bright.
Thank you, everybody. For those of you who may have joined during the midway through the discussion, we're Beluga, we're the nerd wallet for crypto. Will writes our newsletter. It comes out 3 times a week. It's completely free. It's the best newsletter in crypto. We also write articles about everything going on in the industry. And then we host these podcasts with the most interesting people in crypto and crypto adjacent fields. So if you like this conversation, please like, comment, follow all the speakers, retweet so I can drop out of school. It's really important right now. These weeks are expensive. Thank you, everybody.